Hello, True Health Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. I am so excited for you to hear today's interview with Dr. Terry Wahls, who is quite the celebrity in the holistic health space. She reversed her MS using food and has gone on to help thousands of people reverse autoimmune conditions and heal their brain, heal their nervous system. She has a very interesting approach to healing the body by using food. And the majority of the diet is vegetables. Now, I want to let you know that if you're the type of person that does not know how to cook and eat delicious vegetables, please join the Learn True Health Home Kitchen. Back in October, I started working with my friend Naomi, who's an amazing stay-at-home chef. She has created some amazingly delicious and healing recipes. And of course, that's what my passion is as well, using the kitchen to heal my body and keep my family healthy. And so we started filming for 4 months. We filmed videos and we put them all up in a membership. And every week we also add new videos. And these videos teach you how to cook lots of vegetables, lots of plants to heal your body. Now, Dr. Wahls also talks about using things like organ meats to heal the body, and she goes through that in the interview. And of course, you definitely are going to want to get her new book. She has so much science behind it and also many results clinically, which is really, really exciting. Thousands of people have been able to put their MS in remission and other autoimmune diseases in remission using her way, her diet. And she explains that there's different ways to do it. You can take her formula and you can do it in a vegan or vegetarian way. If you have allergies or religious beliefs or you don't want to eat meat, there's a way to do it that way, a way to go more whole food plant-based with her protocol. She does mention in the interview it's difficult, but it's doable. She works with Dr. Joel Kahn, who's a plant-based vegan cardiologist, and they together help people reverse heart disease and MS and autoimmune conditions together. She says in the interview, she says it's difficult because they don't have a complete protein. And what she meant by that was not that the whole food plant-based diet is void of protein. It's not. There's protein in everything. In all plants, there's protein. What she was referring to is that her protocol is very limiting because it's an autoimmune protocol. So there's no potatoes, there's no beans, there's no grains, and so if someone is going to take her protocol and also be a vegan, they're going to have to really monitor their diet closely so that they're making sure they're getting all the nutrition they require to heal the body. We can use food as medicine. There's not one diet that fixes everyone because everyone is on different paths. You know, one person is healing their diabetes, the other one is healing their heart disease, the other one is healing an autoimmune condition, the other one is trying to gain weight, the other one's trying to lose weight, someone's trying to gain muscle. Now, you can accomplish many of these things by eating whole foods. What does that mean? It means not eating processed foods, eating whole foods. And so Dr. Terry Wahls today is going to share some amazing stories and amazing success around showing people how to dial in their diet to heal their body. And if you want to learn how to cook whole foods and learn from myself and Naomi, we have some amazing recipes that are so delicious that our kids love eating these meals. Kids that normally don't like vegetables are now eating them and loving them. So if you want to figure out how to use your kitchen to heal your body, please join Learn True Health Home Kitchen. You'll also be supporting the Learn True Health podcast by doing that. We made it affordable for everyone. You can join monthly or annually. Go to learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. That's learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. You are just going to love it. I've got one recipe in the baked section that is a 10-pound lasagna, and lasagna is 100% made of plants. And so it's just you're getting all your vegetables. And the kids love it. They love it. And they don't realize that they're eating so many vegetables. And it is so delicious. And there's no grains in it. It's grain-free. and it's just a very delicious, I call it the 10-pound lasagna because it's 10 pounds of vegetables and it's just amazing. It's so delicious. So I'm excited for you to join Learn True Health Home Kitchen. Go to learntruehealth.com/home kitchen and join our membership. You'll be supporting yourself and your family. If you're stuck at home during the quarantine, there's over 7 hours of videos and content right now in the membership. You'll be able to pour through them and learn all these wonderful recipes and ways of healing your body. We even have recipes that incorporate antiviral foods to support the immune system. LearnTrueHealth.com/home kitchen. Excellent. Thank you so much for being a listener. Thank you so much for sharing this episode with those you care about, especially those you know in your life who have MS or have any form of autoimmune condition. This diet, this protocol is proving to be incredibly successful, and I'm so excited and grateful to be able to bring this information to you today. Let's share it with as many people as possible and turn this ripple into a tidal wave to help as many people as possible to learn true health. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 418. I am so excited for today's guest. I feel like you are a celebrity in my world, so I am starstruck. Dr. Terry Wahls here. You, to me, are like the bringer, the mother of using food as medicine, of the founder of bringing forth the knowledge of like what we've known for centuries but forgotten in the last 100 years, that when we eat our medicine, when I treat our plate as if it's our prescription, we can heal disease. And you have been showing us with your own example, and you've helped thousands and thousands of people. So I am so inspired by you. So many of my listeners, when I told them I was interviewing you, got so excited because we can, with whole foods, we can heal our body, and you're showing us that. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely. Now, for those who don't know who you are, or haven't seen your TEDx talk, which I'm going to make sure the link to it is in the show notes of the podcast. Everyone should Google Dr. Terry Wahls and watch the first video that comes up is the TED Talk, because it is so inspiring. But even since then, because that was back in 2011, so much has happened, and I can't wait to hear what has happened since. Can you, for those who have never heard of you before, can you fill us in? Give us what happened in your life that led you to using food as medicine?
So I'm an internal medicine physician at the University of Iowa, very conventional, believed in the latest drugs, best technology, and was very skeptical of special diets and supplements and all of that stuff. But God works in mysterious ways to teach us. I developed weakness in my left leg in 2000 and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I knew it's a progressive disease and I wanted to treat my disease aggressively. So I sought out the best people I could find, took the newest drugs, but went relentlessly downhill. Within 2 years, my Cleveland Clinic physicians had told me about the work of Loren Cordain. I read his books and his papers and decided after 20 years of being a low-fat vegetarian to go back to eating meat. I gave up all grains, all legumes, all dairy, and was eating meat. So it was a big change. I continued to go downhill, but I stayed with that diet because I figured it may take, I didn't know how long to change my course. The next year I needed a tilt-recline wheelchair. I started taking more potent drugs, including tizabri, that new biologic, continued to go relentlessly downhill. They tried a variety of other disease-modifying drugs, and they never had any impact. But I stayed with them because I was trying to do everything that I possibly could. I also decided to begin reading the basic science and to do all that I possibly could. And on that basis, I decided that mitochondria were likely the drivers of disability in MS and many other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ALS. And so I started making a supplement cocktail to support my mitochondria. And that helped my fatigue a little bit, but I was still declining. I also have trigeminal neuralgia, and I actually had that since medical school, since 1980. And my face pain was getting steadily more severe, more difficult. I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine in the summer of '07. I took their course on neuroprotection. I had a longer list of supplements, which I added, and not a lot changed. But then I had a really big aha moment. Like, what if I redesigned my paleo diet in a very specific way based on what I had learned from my review of the basic science and what I was taking in supplement form? So that was several more months of research. And I started this new way of eating in the December 26, 2008. Now, mind you, at that point, I'm beginning to have problems with brain fog. Of course, I have severe, severe fatigue. I am so weak I cannot sit up in a regular chair. I'm in a zero gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. And it's a struggle to walk 10 feet using 2 walking sticks. I start this new way of eating. Within 3 months, my trigeminal neuralgia is gone. My brain fog is gone. My fatigue is gone. And I'm able to sit up and eat at the kitchen table again. And then in 6 months, I'm walking around the hospital with a walking stick. And in 9 months, I'm able to get on my bike for the first time in 6 years. And I am able to pedal around the block. My son and my daughter are crying. My wife is crying. I am crying. And in a year, I'm able to do an 18.5-mile bike ride with my family.
Oh, I love
And once
it.
again, my kids are crying, my wife's crying, and I'm crying. And then this radically changes how I will practice medicine. And it will ultimately change the type of research that I do.
I bet. How did you come across the idea that mitochondria and feeding the mitochondria was the key?
As I was continuing to go relentlessly downhill, despite taking the best drugs from the best people, I was like, okay, I can go back to reading the literature. I started to start reading the animal models for MS. And then I thought, well, I might as well read about the other neurodegenerative diseases with shrinking brains. So I'm reading the animal models of Parkinson's, of Alzheimer's. I see that mitochondrial dysfunction is present in all those disease states, although no one's yet talking about it in MS. But I decide, since I never really had relapses, I had really only one relapse, maybe 2 in my entire course. Otherwise, it was a slow, relentless decline, that mitochondria was probably the big driver for my illness. And so then my research was like, okay, so what nutrients could I take? Supplements, vitamins. And slowly, again, I'm reading the basic science, animal model studies, and slowly I'm coming up with a supplement cocktail that's helpful. And that's not stopping anything, but I'm slowing my decline, and I can tell the days I skip my supplements, I don't do as well. So I'm very excited by that, and I'm excited because I'm learning stuff that my medical team is not telling me. So I'm feeling very impassioned, and I'm willing to spend more time reading the literature. By now, I've been assigned to join the Institutional Review Board to review clinical research, and I tell my partners that I want to review all of the brain-related studies. So I'm getting more and more comfortable reading the basic science, reading clinical trials, and I'm getting more comfortable experimenting on myself.
Very interesting observation that the days that you skip your your B vitamins and your supplements, that you notice a difference right away.
Correct. Well, it takes about 36 hours. Here's what happened. After 6 months of my first round of supplements, the conventional doc reared her head and said, "Oh, you're just wasting your money."
Ugh.
So I quit them all. And then, I could go to work the next day, but then after 36 hours, I just felt profoundly even more exhausted. And on the third day, my wife came in and said, "Honey, I think I ought to take these again." So I took them, and then the next morning I could go to work. And I thought, wow, that is really, really interesting. So 2 weeks later, I did the same thing. I stopped all my supplements. And again, at 36 hours, my fatigue was even much more severe. I waited 3 days. I started them up again and said, okay, that is when I was so excited. Like, okay, I'm figuring stuff out.
Right. That there's, I guess, one way that someone could have MS is that it's, my understanding, and maybe you could shed some light on this, is that it's an autoimmune condition, or at least that's been
Yes.
So people think it's autoimmune, but an autoimmune condition wouldn't get better and worse and better and worse, because you took your supplements one day and then didn't the next. So, right? Is that my understanding?
Correct. So we've known for a long time that MS has both an inflammation component and a degeneration component. And early on, the researchers focused in on finding drugs and strategies that would turn off the excess inflammation. Now that we understand the MRI, we've been measuring brain volume and spinal cord volume, we realize that as the brain volume shrinks, the disability is fixed. If you have inflammation, you'll have weakness that may disappear when the inflammation, when that acute relapse goes away, and you get back to close to normal. But as the volume decreases, the disability is fixed, and the thinking is it's the mitochondria that aren't making enough energy that are leading to the brain volume loss, and that are leading to the permanent disability. And so a lot of the drugs that are focused on stopping inflammation are really good at stopping inflammation, but they don't have any drugs for mitochondria. It turns out that that's really a diet and lifestyle thing.
Right. You can't feed a body a bunch of drugs and expect it to make, enzymes, and because the body needs nutrients.
Needs all the parts.
Right.
Needs all the parts.
The building
to do
blocks
the
of
chemistry.
life.
Yeah. My daughter went back to school. She's taking a chemistry class, and is thinking about going back to grad school with some more science. And so she is, it's so fun to watch her get so excited about chemistry. And we're having these lovely conversations about biochemistry and nutrition and health. Just like it's just so obvious that if you don't have the building blocks, you can't run the chemistry. And how can you be healthy if you don't have the building blocks to run the chemistry of life?
Right. And we're not going to get it through a fast food drive-through. That's just the standard American diet does not set us up for success. So you noticed a difference on days that you took your supplements versus you didn't within 36 hours. What happened to have you have that aha moment and go, wait a sec, maybe I could get even more if I switched over to food?
Isn't that interesting? So, I started taking it with my supplement cocktail in about 2004, maybe early 2005. And I'm reading the basic science, slowly adding a few more vitamins and supplements. In the summer of 2007, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine. They had a really lovely course on neuroprotection. That, again, was a lot of mitochondria, a lot of biochemistry. I liked it a lot. They had a longer list of supplements, which I added. And then, and I should step back. Remember, I switched from vegetarian to paleo eater, and then I'm adding supplements. And it does not improve me. It's just slowing my decline. And I have to admit, I don't quite recall what was the aha moment. Like, what if I used my list of supplements to say, these are the food, I need to figure out where these are in the food supply and stress those foods. Because, of course, food is really complex. It's much more than at that time, it was 19 different nutrients that I was working on supplement-wise. Now there are 36 nutrients that we monitor to determine the quality of the diet in terms of brain health. But so when I went to my registered dietitian colleagues, I said, so what foods would these be but I need to eat to, have a rich supply of these nutrients. And the response was like, that's complicated. I need a dietetic intern to look that up. I don't really know. So then I went to the university librarians, and we tried, and they really weren't that helpful. But fortunately, I went back and I found the Linus Pauling Institute on Micronutrients. And I used that as a tremendous resource. So originally I had these long list of foodstuffs that I was stressing, but you can't teach that to the public very well. So then I had to think much more deeply about how could I create a easily understood teaching message that would help people have diets that stress these key nutrients that I'm so keen on. And so that's how I ended up creating the message that I now teach, which was the core part of the Wahls protocol.
Before that, though, before you decided you were going to teach people how to eat this way, you were figuring out for yourself.
Right.
You were experimenting with food in order, and then you started
Correct.
to see results. Can you bring us back to that moment?
Yeah. So what happened there was I'd identified these B vitamins, some sulfur amino acids, carotenoids, a variety of fats. And I had that as I needed to have foods that would be rich in these things. And so, eventually I get these list of these key foodstuffs that I wanted to be eating. And that was eating liver. I grew up eating liver. I quit eating liver. I was back to I got to eat liver once a week, and to get oysters and mussels a couple times a week. And that the other thing that's fascinating, I identified that carotenoids, all these carotenoids were really vital. And so I ate salads, but now I was eating a tremendously much larger volume of kale and parsley and romaine lettuce, chard, so that, and as you way more garlic, and then flax oil and hemp oil on all of this. And what I discovered was, as I ramped all of this up, I discovered that I couldn't get enough greens. I had just this amazing craving for greens, for cooked kale, for steamed kale, for big kale salads, parsleys. And we've since had more research that has come through on the critical role of vitamin K2 in the brain for stimulating the growth of brain stem cells and the oligodendrocytes that repair the myelin in the brain. So I'm recovering. I'm recovering enough that I'm submitting papers and abstracts to present at scientific meetings, and so I'm going to these meetings. But you can't eat 9 to 12 cups of vegetables on the road very easily. Or I hadn't yet figured out how to do that. So I discovered that 36 hours away from home, my energy was beginning to tank.
Right. Now, had you switched over? Had you stopped taking supplements and you'd been getting all your nutrition from food?
No, I was still taking my supplements, but I was taking, so I could still take the supplements, but I couldn't take all the food. When I was away from it, it's like within 36 hours, my energy level was dropping quite remarkably, and my mental clarity was dropping quite remarkably. So I would eventually learn, okay, you gotta. So I would pack food with me. Mm-hmm. I'd pack kale with me, and I'd be eating my kale. I'd pack cabbage with me, and I'd eat cabbage. So if I would pack these foods, and cabbage flies really well because it's very forgiving. It doesn't. You can go several days without being in a refrigerator. It's not a big deal. And I really enjoy raw cabbage, so I could go with a green cabbage. I could go with a purple cabbage. I could go with green or purple kale. And those are very portable foods.
Mm-hmm. And delicious.
And delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And when I traveled with my vegetables in tow, and so I didn't have my vegetable intake drop, then I was fine.
Fascinating. Now you figured out that you needed certain compounds like sulfur, iodine. Can you break that down a bit? The really
Yeah.
important, and you mentioned
So
carotenoids. What is that?
carotenoids, those are the antioxidants that are in plants, and they're part of the pigment in plants.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them are in the green plants, but also in red, orange, blue, purple, black. I also have a variety of carotenoids in them. And you can think of these as the polyphenols, the antioxidants. These are compounds that help protect. Yeah, every chemical plant always has some trash in it, as you do the chemical processes. That's just whether it's a man-made chemical plant or a biologic chemical plant. There's some biochemical trash in our mitochondria and biochemical trash in our cells. And the color, the carotenoids in our plants sort of mop up that trash very nicely.
So they go in and they clean up the mitochondria. They like give it a little spring
clean up
cleaning.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly correct. And they provide support to a lot of enzymes in the mitochondria to improve their efficiency. They also provide support to some of the enzymes in the brain for making neurotransmitters. And they provide support to the enzymes involved in the processing and eliminating of toxins.
So these are things that are really hard to get from supplements. You can get a B complex, but if you're just taking supplements and then eating potatoes and corn and just the standard American diet, you're not getting the carotenoids.
And you're not getting the diversity. You see, we have had about 1.5 billion, maybe 2 billion years worth of random mutations that have occurred in DNA that have allowed us to create enzymes that facilitate the chemistry of life. So we have this rich array of compounds that support the chemistry of life. Food is vastly more complicated than the, I think, 34 different nutrients that the U.S. Department of Agriculture have listed with recommended daily allowance or average intake recommendations for us. We need food with all of its complexity and diversity in order for us to run the full chemistry of life with all of its complexity and diversity. In fact, when I was in medical school, we were so excited about the genome project because we were going to analyze the human DNA and sequence it, and that we thought we'd have about 100,000 genes because of the number of proteins that humans have. And it turns out we have only about 25,000 genes. So, the big question is like, man, where did those other 75,000 genes go? Because, corn, grass, plants, wheat have more like 100,000 genes. And we were sort of, our professors were sort of offended that plants appeared to be more complicated than humans. That just was like, how could that be? And of course, nobody knew anything about the microbiome. Then we just thought poop was poop. Now we know that our microbiome is teeming with life, and it's as those bacteria and those microbes help eat the food that we consume and help digest the food and make vitamins and other small molecules that would get into our bloodstream. It's the bacteria that have those other 75,000 genes, that have the DNA to make the enzymes, to make those compounds that we need for the other processes that we can no longer do. But our bacteria could, or, and when the mutation occurred thousands of generations ago in our ancestral mother, she had reproductive success because the microbes in her gut could still do that chemical step. And so it was at that moment that the genetic instruction for that chemical step was exported from the human DNA to bacterial DNA.
Fascinating. Now, your microbiome changed because you changed your diet and it became more diverse
Absolutely.
because you ate a more diverse diet of plants, because that's what
Correct.
feeds meat. Meat doesn't necessarily feed a
Well,
microbiome well, but plants do, right?
let me modify that. So the meat feeds your microbiome. The supplements you eat feed your microbiome. The junk food you eat feeds your microbiome. Plants feed your microbiome. The things that are new to our microbiome are the processed foods, the processed food additives, emulsifiers, sugar, white flour, pasta, cereals. All those things are clearly feeding disease-promoting bacteria. Plants, they're probably feeding the same kind of bacteria that were in our ancestral mothers for thousands of generations. Meat, again, thousands of generations. Whole grains and legumes, that'd be about 8,000 years. So a few generations, not as many as the meat and plants have been eating.
Mm-hmm.
The sugar, about 300 years. The emulsifiers, food additives, that's probably about 100 years.
I heard one microbiome expert said that we've created the Homer Simpson of microbiome in the modern diet. That it is, it's just kind of dumbed down and very limited in its functionality.
Very limited. On my study team, I have a bunch of dietitians on my study team, and we love talking about diet, food quality, the research. And the research, I mean, I think it's really very interesting. There are many diets. Humans can eat a wide variety of things and be healthy. My mitochondria can burn protein, and so I could have, during the winter, my ancestral mothers and fathers either had to live off their own fat, or if the hunt was good, they got to have meat. And otherwise, you had to wait until the next hunt was good, because you'd be summer before there was plant material again. Mm-hmm. So you'd have several months where you could have meat or nothing. Mm-hmm. And then during the summer, you could have plants. And if the hunt was bad, you just had plants or nothing. And if the hunt was okay, you'd have a combination of plants and meat. So we can survive on just plants for a while, but we will have to have protein. Otherwise, we can't live without protein. We can survive for a long time on just fat, our own fat. That's how we survived war, winter, famine. And we can survive for a while on meat alone. I don't know that we have any societies that have over their lifetime been a meat-only eater. But we do know the standard American diet is wrecking our health. Mm-hmm. And so we can have the Mediterranean diet and have better health. We can have the paleo diet and have better health. You can have a ketogenic diet and have better health. You have the standard American diet, and as a population, our health declines. And we have these exploding rates of obesity, autoimmunity, mental health issues, and cancers. And so if I take you off that diet and I could put you on a Mediterranean diet, a paleo diet, a ketogenic diet, and your health will improve. And with a little bit of structure, I can put you on a vegetarian or a vegan diet, and your health will improve. So I have a bias that I think our diet, of all the diets out there, have been most thoughtfully structured, and we're the only one who've really done any prospective studies and detailed nutritional analyses to say, and we know that this diet provides everything that your brain needs.
While you were traveling and you were experimenting with food, eating tons of plants, and of course you were eating, you said liver, I believe you said once a week, you're eating grass-fed
once a week,
meat.
Yep.
So you're eating organ meat once a week, you're eating grass-fed meat, free range.
Well, liver.
Sorry?
I'm going to correct you there. So liver once a week, heart probably once a week, oysters and mussels once or twice a week. So I was eating a lot of organs, a lot of as paying deep attention to diversity of my meats and diversity of my plants.
Now, you ate, I believe you said 9 cups of vegetables a day. So it didn't.
So I told the public to eat 9. I was probably eating more like 12.
See, yeah, nine seems small because of when you started, when you've been describing how much variety of vegetables, but you ate a huge amount of beautiful variety, a variety of plants. So it's not like you're eating a carnivore diet. You're listing off all these meats and stuff,
Correct.
but it's really a small amount of animal products in comparison to the rest of your diet, which was a variety of beautiful vegetables and berries. And so as you were, you did that experiment accidentally where you cut back on your 12 cups of vegetables while you were traveling, and you noticed within 36 hours you had fatigue and brain fog. Did you ever experiment with cutting out the animal products for a few days and noticing if you also experienced the same effect?
Correct. I could do no meat for 2 days. Beyond that, it does not work.
So you had the same experience of lowered.
Yeah.
So there's some key nutrients that you figured out in the organ meats. And
the organ meats are really superfoods. I had some debates with the carnivore folks who, and I'm with them. I like liver. I think it's really good for you, but I only want people to have about 6 to 8 ounces of liver a week. I want them to otherwise have other organs, heart, kidney, oysters, mussels, whole sardines. If you have more than 8 ounces of liver, then you're going to be at risk for chronic vitamin A toxicity. But if you don't have enough retinol, then you're at risk for retinol insufficiency, which also increase the risk for infection, autoimmunity, and cancer. So there's a balance. Liver once a week. My mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother all said liver once a week, and by God, they were correct.
Right. If we look at even the health of our great-grandparents versus the health that we have today, like we really do need to go back. If we just go back a few hundred years, we would eat such a better diet than what we're eating now. I really do love what you've dialed in. Now, the question is, where's the science? So you experimented on yourself, but since then,
yes. Where is the science?
Where's the science? I'd love to know. Have you been able to do clinical studies? Have you been able to
absolutely
prove that this formula is effective for other people as well?
Yeah, my area of research was diagnostic error, looking at what we called secondary data analysis. But when I had my recovery, the chair of medicine had saw my recovery. He's over there at the U again, called me in. I told him what I'd done, and he's a rheumatology doctor. He said, Terry, this is so important. I want you to get a case report written up. And I said, like, on myself? I said, yes. Work with your treating team. That's your assignment for the year. So I salute and say, like, okay. So I get that done. And he calls me back and says, and now I want you to do a safety and feasibility study. And I said, like, well, I don't really have training in that. I will get you mentors. That's your assignment. So again, I salute, and we get the protocol written up. It takes me a while to get it written up and through the IRB. Now I have to raise about $100,000. And when you have less than 2% of protocols get funding. But, if we have any Canadian listeners, we have to thank the Canadians, because it was a Canadian small nonprofit that gave us that funding.
Nice.
And a little electrotherapy device, EMPI, that gave us that funding. And we were able to do that small early pilot study. And we're able to show that, yes, other people could implement my diet and lifestyle program. that it was safe, that the biggest risk was if you're overweight, you lost weight and got back to a healthy body weight.
If people were at normal weight or underweight, would they lose weight as well?
They would get back to the weight that they were at as a young adult, as about a 19 to 22-year-old.
So
without being hungry. So nobody became underweight.
Okay.
We're able to we're able to work with people to keep them within that target BMI, and they lost their weight actually quite rapidly. I had to file safety reports every 3 months because of that. And fortunately for me, people got to their young adult weight and stayed there and did very, very well. Then we're able to show that quality of life went up quite remarkably. You got the short form 36, a 5-point change is clinically meaningful. And we had a 16-point change. So that would be clinically very, very meaningful. And the p-value was less than 0.0005. So that's hugely impactful. The fatigue severity dropped quite largely. That scale goes from 7, total fatigue in every aspect of your life, to 1, no fatigue in any aspect of your life. And we had a reduction of about, I think it was 2.38. Again, clinically huge and statistically very, very meaningful. Again, less than 0.0005.
What's a low P rate mean?
Well, it means that it's a statistical way of saying it's significant. If it's less than 0.05, then that means there's a 95% probability that is statistically meaningful. It wasn't a random possibility. So the fact that I'm less than 0.0005 would mean there'd be less than 0.005% chance of random finding of that. So that in the science world, that is hugely, hugely significant.
I bet. You're using diet and nutrition. You were using it to heal your specific condition. But do you think your diet could heal all conditions? Do you think that this is the perfect diet for everyone, or just for specific diseases?
Well, the VA was this changed how I practice medicine in my primary care clinic, in the traumatic brain injury clinic. And there I was taking care of people with diabetes, obesity, heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic pain, post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic brain injury. My Veteran Affairs Hospital was so impressed that they pulled me out of those clinics and put me in my own clinic. And that we call it the Therapeutic Lifestyle Clinic. And there I went and asked people who had the pain clinic and the primary care clinics and said, give me your people who are most refractory to treatment, who you can't really help. But they need to know I'm only using diet and lifestyle. You're going to do the drugs. I'm not doing any drugs for these patients. And so we got a few folks, had tremendous success, started getting more and more referrals. And we just had such success that the VA National Office came out to see me. We wrote grant, expanded the clinic. And then 3 years ago, I decided to leave the VA because by then I'm now traveling the world, lecturing, teaching other physicians, other researchers how to do what it is that I do.
Brilliant. You mentioned that if the population just stopped eating the standard American diet and ate, and you listed off, even vegan or vegetarian, paleo, keto, Mediterranean, all of those would be better choices than the standard American diet. Can someone heal? Could someone choose like a whole food plant-based diet, eating 12 cups of variety of vegetables a day and heal their mitochondria? Or did you find that you absolutely need to eat organ meat in order to heal the mitochondria?
So in my book, The Wahls Protocol, I do have levels. So for the vegetarian vegans, I provide a structure for them and supplement recommendations so that they could address their mitochondria. Most folks who are vegetarian or vegans unless they're taking supplements, are going to end up with chronic disease and a neurologic problem.
Why is that? What supplements?
That's because they don't have a complete protein. If they aren't taking B vitamins, they'll ultimately become short on B12. They may become short on iodine. They may become short on minerals. And so you can be a vegetarian and vegan, but you have to be very thoughtful. You have to structure your diet carefully, and you need some B vitamins, and you need some supplements.
Mm-hmm. Most people need supplements if they've been eating the standard American diet because they're highly deficient.
Well, the recovery will be faster. In my VI, we had very limited supplements that we could use. This was really a diet and lifestyle program. And my folks were living on food stamps. They're often disabled, unable to work, and they're shopping in rural, small town Iowa. It's certainly not Whole Foods, and we had remarkable success. So I mean, I had to teach them how to cook, and I wasn't doing any fancy functional medicine testing. I was doing just basic primary care labs, but we had worked out how to grow their internal motivation. We've created what I now call the Wahls behavior change model, and that's part of what I teach clinicians. Because the reasons our patients get better, whether you're a conventional doc or you're a functional medicine doc, the reason they get better or not is most often really contingent on can they follow your recommendations to improve their diet quality and their health behaviors. And because we're asking people to give up today's pleasures for tomorrow's benefits.
But it could be something as quick as days of eating vegetables. How soon did you notice a shift in your symptoms? Because you were very sick.
In a month.
In 1 month.
In a month.
So it took like 30 days and then you started noticing it, or was it gradual over that month?
Gradual over that month. And in my clinics with the VA, we'd see people monthly for that first 6 months. And it was very typical when they'd come back at the end of that first month, they could tell that things were beginning to improve, often for the first time in years, many times decades, that their pain was lessening, their brain fog was lessening, their energy was improving, that the world was less irritating to them, and it was easier to get along with family, with coworkers, with colleagues, with their spouse, with their kids. And it was because the inflammation in their brain and their spinal cord is going down. And their weight is coming down quite remarkably. And they're not starving. They're not hungry. They're eating to satiety. And of course, many of these folks had either never been taught how to cook or had forgotten how to cook. So we'd have cooking classes and food demonstrations to show them how to do this affordably, how to do it affordable in terms of money and in terms of time. It has to be manageable for both.
Were all the participants in this study, did they all have MS or did they have a variety of neurological symptoms?
In my clinical trials, we've only studied multiple sclerosis. In my clinics, so I told you about my primary care clinic and my traumatic brain injury clinic. In my lifestyle clinic, we'd see folks with anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar, and then we'd see rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, fibromyalgia, myasthenia gravis, MS, Parkinson's, cognitive decline, chronic pain following back surgery, chronic pain following a war injury or a traumatic amputation, chronic headaches following a severe traumatic brain injury. And then, of course, the usual diabetes, obesity, heart disease, heart failure. We had some neuropathies following chemotherapy. So a wide variety of conditions. The most common symptoms were pain, decreasing energy or fatigue problems, irritability, brain fog. And people would often report that those symptoms were reducing within 4 to 6 weeks. And they'd continue to improve over the next 6 months.
Did their MS go away?
And I'm very clear, I still have, in my case, I still have lesions in my spinal cord, a couple lesions in my head. But these were lesions that had been there for years. My neurologist, when I went back to see him, he was so excited to get another MRI. He was disappointed that the MRI hadn't changed. He said, but no, Terry, in retrospect, it was foolish to think that they would because those were old lesions. So, of course, they're going to stay. If you have new lesions, that are less than 2 years old, there's plenty of reason to be very hopeful that those lesions will go away. If they're old lesions, older than 2 years, they may well stay. And I tell I'm very clear with all of my patients, whether you have an autoimmune problem or a degenerative problem or diabetes, obesity, if we change your diet and lifestyle to health promoting diet and lifestyle choices, and your blood pressure improves, your blood sugar improves, your mood improves, you're doing great, you're off meds. And so you think now you're cured, you can go back to your old ways, all of your diseases will come screaming back and you'll need all of your drugs again. It's the diet and lifestyle choices that made those diseases develop.
Well, it's kind of like taking a poison, right? If I were to give arsenic to someone and they get sick and then, and then they take an antidote and they're like, oh, I'm better again. So then they keep taking the arsenic, right? I
can go back to eating arsenic.
Right, exactly. The diet is the arsenic. The diet causes these diseases. It's not that we're broken, because I feel that's the mentality. Yes. And I love that you have a behavioral change model, because part of that is the mentality that I'm broken and I need drugs, for example. I'm not against drugs. They're not the only thing out there, and it's certainly not the cure if the diet is the poison.
What we teach is we're creating health by helping you learn health behaviors, health promoting behaviors. And what I can't predict for anyone is how much health recovery is possible. Typically, I am quite delighted that vastly more health recovery is possible than the person had dared to hope for, because they were so ill that they had been afraid. They just couldn't know what might be possible. So as we embrace those health behaviors, and I get them to understand how to shop and make menus and eat and cook and prepare all of that, and we teach them how to find joy and meaning in their life as it is, and how to manage their stress levels, in self-cares, and to go outside and move and be in the sunlight again. What they discover is the blood pressure begins to improve. The blood sugars begin to improve. Their mood improves. They're having joyful relationships with their family. The guys come in, smile, and say, Doc, you didn't tell me that my love life would come back. And so they're smiling. And the ladies are in because they're so pleased that they're getting their old bodies back. They're losing weight, getting back to a younger, healthier self.
Beautiful. Now, I interviewed Dr. Joel Kahn, and he said to me he was very excited for the research that you're doing now. And I think it was specifically around a whole food plant-based diet. Can you shed some light on that?
Well, so what Joel is, he is more of a low-fat person, and he is very much into plants. He comes at this from a cardiology perspective. And where Joel and I agree is that it's certainly possible to have a vegetarian diet. He and I recognize that you got to follow your B12 very closely. You want to follow your mineral status. You want to follow your protein status. And while if you do a low-fat diet, you still have to maintain your omega-3, 6 fatty acid, omega-6 fatty acid ratios, so that it's the ratio that's also very important in addition to having sufficient fats in your brains are fat. The research that I do uses the Wahls paleo diet or the Wahls elimination diet. So in my clinical practice, we do take care of people who are vegetarian and vegans, and we have a diet that Joel Kahn would be thrilled that we are using. But and that's in my clinical practice for people who are vegetarian or vegan, for their religious beliefs, or who may have a particular reason to follow a lower cholesterol diet because of their underlying heart disease. But in my MS clinical research, we do either the Wahls paleo or the Wahls elimination diet.
Mm-hmm. Explain how we can get healthy fats from our diet to support our brain. People are worried about Alzheimer's and dementia. That's on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, not only MS, but that there's other neurological problems that are they look like they're on the rise.
It is absolutely. It's very scary. The rates of cognitive decline, early dementias. Mm-hmm. And early dementias in the 40s that are being found. And of course, there are many factors with that. Part of that is a diet that drives your insulin up very high. So if you have a diet that's high in carbs, that can drive your insulin high. When the insulin is high, your brain can't clear out some of the toxic trash, the beta amyloid as well. So you're at higher risk for cognitive decline. If you have more toxins, heavy metals, mercury, arsenic, you're at higher rates for cognitive decline. If you have unrecognized gluten sensitivity, you're at a much higher rate of cognitive decline. If you aren't physically active, you have a higher rate of cognitive decline. If you smoke or exposed to air pollution, you have higher rates of cognitive decline. If you are lonely, you have higher rates of cognitive decline. Mm-hmm. So there are many, many, many factors here. And so when we see people, when we talk about the many things that are under our control, that can markedly reduce your risk of cognitive decline. When I first started doing my research in 2010, I was like the only person doing a food-based dietary intervention. And I was the only person doing a multimodal diet, stress reduction, exercise intervention. Because the feeling was that if you didn't do one molecular pathway at a time, if you had a good effect, we wouldn't know the mechanism. Now, fortunately, my chair of medicine said, the question is, can people do what you did? And if they do, what happens? Mm-hmm. So we saw that, yes, they could do it. We didn't hurt them, and we had dramatically favorable results. Now, and we're doing more of these complicated diet, stress reduction, exercise studies. And the NIH is now doing more of these diet and lifestyle studies to look at other autoimmune conditions and other issues of cognitive decline.
Did you see, I know you said you're just doing basic labs, but did you see that in the labs that their autoimmune, whatever markers you use for autoimmune, that they were going down as well as healing mitochondria?
So as you address the diet and lifestyle factors, you can do autoimmunity panels. And there's much more sophisticated autoantibodies that look at brain structures, look at thyroid, look at bone, that you can see someone comes in with many autoantibodies. And if we teach them how to address diet and lifestyle and adapt these health behaviors, we can see these autoantibody profiles come down. In the VA, thyroid disease is very, very common, and having people implement the Wahls protocol, and we follow their thyroid antibodies, we could see the antibodies coming down nicely.
Beautiful.
And that's a lovely marker that people can use to monitor that they're having a great biologic success at changing the trajectory of their illness. Mm-hmm. And if they can go back to being autoantibody negative, they have reversed the damage. Whereas if you continue to have autoantibodies, we know that you're damaging yourself and you are developing a more a more progressive organ damage.
Right. Whether it's the thyroid or the mitochondria or, wherever the autoimmune is presenting. So that's
Correct.
such a clear picture that helps motivate the patient to keep going because it's going
It
in the
can
right
help it.
direction.
But, even more important than blood work, I talk about your biosensor. So now, and again, this is something I learned both from my own personal experience and from working with veterans, is to help educate them to identify their subtle symptoms. For me, because of my trigeminal neuralgia, if I have changes in sensation on my face, that will come up. And if I know that if I don't address that, my face pain, electrical face pain due to trigeminal neuralgia will turn on, and I will have horrific levels of pain in very short order. So that's my biosensor. And so I talk to patients like, okay, so we want you to figure out what are your subtle symptoms that are sort of like your warning that there's more incipient trouble ahead for you. And if you can identify these subtle symptoms that are your biosensor, you can use that to help monitor your environment. If your biosensor is turning on, then you can sit back and think like, okay, is there something in my diet that I might be have a food sensitivity to? Was I exposed to more toxins? Is there a bigger situational stressor that's going on? Am I not outside enough? Has my vitamin D level fallen? Am I having a viral infection? So I help people tune into their subtle symptoms for their biosensor, and then help them develop that internal checklist of what are all the environmental exposures I could run through in my mind to see, could this be what's making my biosensor turn on today?
Oh, I
And then
love
what could
it.
I do about it?
Right. I love that because they're tuning into their own body. I interviewed Palmer Kippola, who had MS for many years, and I believe it was over 10 years that as she was adjusting her diet and figuring out, what worked for her, she made a checklist and she realized that she could predict if she would have within a month if she would have a relapse based on sleep, stress, nutrition. If she sort of partied too hard or whatever it was, and or had too much stress, she saw that she didn't get her supplements or her nutrition or these really important
Yeah.
factors. If she just stopped practicing self-care as much, she could predict, she could go, okay, this month I'm going to have one, I'm going to have a relapse. And sure enough, it was predictable. But if she stayed on top of all of the things that you teach, then she
All the
wouldn't.
self-care.
Yeah, all the self-care, everything that you teach and the diet, she would have zero relapses. And so it was just evident to her that something as simple as managing stress, moving your body in a way that brings you joy, hydrating, nutrition, diet being the number one thing, and sleep, even a lack of sleep and stress, those two combined would be enough for her to have a relapse. So she just saw that that
Now,
taking care of yourself on all these
it's so
levels is
important.
so important.
Now think about what's happening in the world right now. This pandemic of the coronavirus that has people afraid, has governments trying to figure out how to contain the spread of the infection. And so there's a lot of fear. People don't know what to do. And so if we have this fear, this isolation, terrible diets, that makes people at much greater risk to have the viral infection and a greater risk to have a more serious infection. And think of the people over the age of 60, an autoimmune disease, or on chronic medication. If we could help them understand that, the concepts that I teach, that the self-cares, the quality of your diet, the meditation, being outside with some sunlight and fresh air, these things are addressing those factors that put you at greater risk.
Yes, it's protective on all fronts.
Yes.
I love it. You mentioned in the evolution of man that there were times where in the winter, those who lived in the north didn't have access to plants, and we either had to fast or we could eat game if we caught it.
Right. If the hunt was good,
And yeah,
then
whatever we could gain access to. But there, in throughout our history, there have been times where we had to fast, where there was famine. We had to fast, and our body figured out how to burn fat for fuel, so that we could fast. I believe it was back in 2012 that it was the discovery of autophagy that occurs
yes.
during fasting, autophagy being the body's own ability to digest pathological tissue and scar tissue. And then there's a huge spike in human growth hormone and in stem cells. Have you looked into or experimented on yourself with using
Yeah.
fasting to heal your lesions?
You know what probably about 18 months now. My typical eating pattern is one meal a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll have like a 2 hour window where I'm eating food. And then 1 week a month, I will have a calorie restricted diet so that I'll have about 500 calories a day
Mm-hmm.
during that week. And by the end of the week, I am pretty hungry, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So after that, then I have a higher protein diet. And that's when my stem cells have all woken up and they're like making the new younger Terry. So I really appreciate that. My family and my kids are like, God, you just keep, your hair is grayer, yes, Mom, but you keep looking younger
Mm-hmm.
and younger and younger.
Mm-hmm.
So that fasting and that intermittent calorie restriction does increase the number of stem cells that your bone marrow makes and releases into the bloodstream in the periphery. And so it does improve your ability to repair your blood vessels, your heart, your brain, your pancreas. It makes for actually younger fat because your fat turns out to be a hormone organ. So intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, great for you. If you do intermittent water fasting, you for sure need to have your personal medical team supervise that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that you address that you're eating very good nutrition after fasting or after a time period of calorie restriction, because those stem cells need nutrition to make healthy new cells. And
To make the new
right,
you.
I've
You want
seen some people come off of a fast and then eat ice cream. And I'm like, you're just building cells made of ice cream. It's not actually, that's not conducive
right.
to building healthy
You,
bodies. So we have to remember
you want to have right.
everything we
You
put in
want
our mouth is building our cells.
becomes you.
Yes.
Everything you eat will become you.
Yeah. Do you want to be a donut?
We want to be eating foods that our great grandmother and great grandfather would recognize as food.
Yes. I love it. Do you have as part of your protocol, is there a percentage of food that's raw so that we get the enzymes, a percentage of food that's
Well,
cooked?
again, this I personalize this based on the circumstances. So the simplest way to think about this is who we're feeding our microbiome and us. And so if I have you monitor your bowel movements, are you passing rocks, logs, snakes, pudding, or tea? If you're passing rocks and dry logs, then your microbiome needs more fiber and more fermented foods, so more raw vegetables, more salads, more resistant starch such as inulin. If you're pooping snakes, that's fine. If the snakes are getting into your pants, that is not socially fine. So you're going to have to back off on the fermented food and the raw things. If you're pooping pudding and tea, again, that's not good. You have to back off. And so some people can only have soups and stews because they have inflammatory bowel disease and they're having pudding and tea.
Mm.
Some people can't manage the snakes because they have a neurologic disease and they have difficulty controlling their sphincter and they have too many accidents.
Mm.
I don't want anybody to have rocks and dry logs. I would much rather that they have enough fiber so that they can easily pass their bowel movements. And there's this stool chart that's like 1 to 7, and that's way too confusing to keep track of the numbers. But all my patients know when I'm talking rocks, dry logs, snakes, pudding, and tea, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
So ideally it's logs, but not dry logs.
Correct. So it's really soft, easily passed bowel movements that you have a couple times a day. You're not having fecal accidents.
Right. Can you tell us more about the Wahls behavioral change model and maybe teach us a little bit? Because I know the listener's been piqued, their interest is piqued, and they want to make changes in their life. Maybe you could teach us a little bit.
Yeah. So our brains, through evolution, and all of the random mutations that occurred in our DNA, if something was pleasurable and we did more of it and it was good for the species, that mutation was passed on. So in general, we're wired to crave pleasure and comfort. And it's really, and we're also wired to be much more interested in what's happening right now than what might happen in the future. So if I tell you to make this change, to give up today's pleasure, that ice cream, to prevent trouble from being demented in 20 years, that's very difficult. That goes against all of the biologic priming of your ancestors over thousands of generations. That's incredibly difficult. And then if I put the ice cream on the counter in a bowl and I put some chocolate sauce on it, it's extremely difficult for you, right? I mean, you can just taste it. It's right there in your mouth. It'd be so yummy. But there are some circumstances where you and I would be willing to go into a burning building to save something or someone that we cared so deeply about, that we wouldn't care about that bowl of ice cream. And so my question is there anything in your life that you care so much about that if you knew that person or that thing was asleep in that house where you see some smoke coming out of the window, that without thinking, you'd be in there getting that item or that person out? And if there is nothing, then I'm going to have to help them have more joy in their life right now, because they're too depressed. But if there is something that they care that much about, then there's a possibility that we can help them give up on the ice cream. Because if I can link the decision that I'm going to give up on the ice cream because I care so much about my grandson that I would take out of the burning house, because I want to be there to see my grandson go to school. I want to see my grandson get married. I want to dance with my daughter at her wedding. And now if I can help them understand the possibility of why eating vegetables and meditating and walking will help you achieve that, and let's figure out what's the next small actionable step. So we've got 15 steps along the way to help people go from their current diet and lifestyle to the more therapeutic diet and lifestyle. But that's part of that whole process that we use. Yeah, and I think when people understand, when I explain to them that, of course, it's very hard to give up today's pleasures for tomorrow's benefit. And that's biologic. And we've had millions of generations where that biology has been reinforced. So that is a incredible ask for you to give up today's pleasures for tomorrow's theoretic benefit. But we will all do it for things that deeply matter to us, such as our children, our grandchildren, or your fellow soldiers in an army unit under fire, or a purpose that you so deeply care about, or perhaps your grandfather's pocket knife that he gave you, and he's dead, and by God, you're not going to lose that. So people or items of tremendous emotional value you're willing to risk pain and suffering and potential harm to go save. So we, in fact, are willing to give up today's pleasure, but we have to put it in context for someone to be willing to do that, and then help them make the small, actionable next step to be successful.
Right. I love that you have 15 small steps, because it seems like almost impossible, like to go from eating no vegetables at all, or people eat potatoes, because I think that's a vegetable in the form of fries.
Correct.
And to go
Correct.
to from that to 9 cups.
There's a lot of steps that we go through to help people be successful. You have to grow the insights to understand how it's possible. You have to connect the motivation. You have to help people find joy in their life as it is right now.
The listener was following you as you were describing that, and they in their mind mentally threw out the ice cream to save their favorite person or object from a burning building. What next steps could they take today?
Well, so again, it will depend on the person and their circumstances. What are their diagnoses? What am I helping them address? I think the first step that really want people to think deeply about is, what do you want your health for? And spend some time journaling about that, what I want my health for. And that is the beginning of the process. Because whenever you're changing your behavior, you can sort of think about the last time you changed a health behavior, broke a bad habit, made a new habit. The reason you were successful was that you decided it was worth it to you to put in that effort. We never make those kinds of changes just because I came over and said, oh, you got to start walking an hour every day. When we make a new habit or extinguish an old bad habit, it's because I made the internal decision that my desire for change is great enough that I'm willing to put in the effort. So the very first step for any change is this really deep reflection on, what do I want my health for? Because I have to grow your desire to put in the work.
Yes. Well, look at you. You were, in a wheelchair, in a zero gravity chair, and months later, you were walking without assistance. And months
I'm
after
walking without
that,
assistance.
you were,
And within a year, 18.5 miles on a bike ride.
oh my gosh. So those who are sick and suffering right now and immobile know that within a year, you could be mobile. You could be out of pain. You could be, you can end the suffering.
And I spent a fair amount of time helping people understand that their life has meaning and they could have joy now in their circumstances as they are right now, even if they're in a wheelchair, even if they're having pain, even if they have tremendous sorrow because they've lost someone who is deeply, deeply important to them.
So it's needing to shift the mindset first. That's where it really allows them to
All
make those
change
changes.
begins.
Yeah.
All change begins first with understanding why I want to make that change.
You had to overcome a lot of, or maybe you're just a black sheep, because you had to have a mindset to be so different than your training. As an MD, you're not trained as an MD to look at food and nutrition.
Gosh, no.
So
no.
you had to overcome. And like you said, you started out by go to the Cleveland Clinic and doing the chemotherapy and doing all the drugs and doing everything. Like, you were a really good patient.
So I absolutely, and I believed in all those drugs. I still take gabapentin, a small dose. And the gabapentin, if I don't take any, my face pain will come back. If I take small doses, I'm pain free.
Mm-hmm.
So there's absolutely a role for medication for some conditions, and some people may need disease modifying drugs. So I also want to tell your listeners that I did all of this to slow my decline. I had no hope of recovery. I had accepted that there'd be, with progressive MS, no return of functions once lost.
Wow.
I couldn't sit up. My pain was getting more and more severe. My brain fog was more troublesome. I knew I would probably soon be forced to stop working. But I felt like I have to do everything that I possibly can. I have young kids. My kids are in high school and junior high. And I'm like, I was still doing my little tiny simple workout. I'm still doing everything that I can, reading the basic science, experimenting on myself, because I wanted them to see that life's not fair, but so what? You don't give up. You just keep doing the best you can.
So that was your mindset, that you were a fighter, but you were also doing it for those you love, your children.
I was modeling my kids that, life's not fair, but you do the best you can anyway. I was modeling for them what I wanted them to, how I wanted them to face their greatest challenge in life. That was my why.
I'm moved to tears. I'm just thinking about, here you were just wanting to slow down the progression so that you could be there longer for your children, but also that you could demonstrate being a fighter. And out of all of this, you have helped so many people. So many people.
When I was walking around, as you have a progressive illness, progressive neurologic illness, you finally get to a point where you take each day as it unfolds, because I knew I had an incurable progressive illness. Mm-hmm. So my pain is gone, my fatigue is gone. I'm walking the neighborhood with walking sticks and without walking sticks, and I'm still taking each day one day at a time because I don't know what any of this really means. It was the day that I got on my bike. I was able to bike around the block that I understood that who knew what might be possible, that the current understanding of MS was incomplete.
Yes.
As I said, my wife's crying, my kids are crying, I'm crying. Actually, I'm crying now too, because that was such a momentous moment. That's when I began to have hope again. It's like, oh my God, how much recovery is possible?
Yes. The body has an amazing ability to heal itself, and you unlocked that. And then you started to see it, but it's the mentality, it's the mindset. We need to adapt the mindset that it is possible to heal, that a diagnosis
is possible.
A diagnosis is not a life sentence. And no matter what the doctors say, because so many doctors tell their patients what they've been told, which is, this is progressive, you're never going to get better. And the fact is, no one knows for sure. Only God, no one knows for sure what is a life sentence and what isn't. But the body has an ability to heal itself, and we need to hold on to hope and believe that we can heal, and then take the actions and fight for ourselves and fight for those we love. And you did that, and look, you're creating a ripple that is going around the world. And is saving millions of lives, and they now get to ride bikes with their children because of you.
Well, and they have meaning to their life, that they have joy and purpose. And some people get on their bikes again, some do not, but some find that they still have a very meaningful and joyful life, and that their purpose is modeling for their kids that you keep doing the best you can.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story. we didn't break down your diet specifically, but those resources are available. I'd love for you to point us in that direction. Of course, listeners can buy your
Oh,
book.
sure.
If a listener wants
Yeah,
to adapt their diet to heal themselves using food as nutrition, what's the best place that they can start?
go to my website, terrywalls.com/diet. We have a one-page handout. That's a great resource. We have many, many resources on the website to get you going. We have, I, I certainly want you to pick up the book. And even if have gotten the first book, the new book has so much more research on epigenetics, the microbiome, on neurorehab. We have more details on oxalates, histamines, FODMAPs. I've added the Wahls elimination diet. And we have a lot more information on ketosis, how we monitor it, and the many different ways of using fasting strategies to get into ketosis. So it's 30% new material. We have lots of bonuses that I talk about in the book that we'll have for you. And if you go to terrywalls.com/bonus, you'll learn more about how to get those bonuses that you'd be able to get by ordering the book.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It has been such a pleasure. You are welcome back anytime you want a platform to teach. We would love to have you back. To wrap up today's interview, is there anything left unsaid or anything you want to say to the listener? Make sure that you leave the listener with.
I'd like you to swap out the sugar for berries and to try having some more greens.
9 cups. I love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
If you love this interview and you love the Learn True Health podcast, please join Learn True Health Home Kitchen. You're supporting the podcast and you're also supporting yourself and your family, and you're continuing your education to learn how to achieve true health. This isn't a diet. The membership isn't a specific diet. It's just teaching you how to eat more nutritious food, how to incorporate whole foods that are unprocessed into your diet in a way that your children will love, in a way that your whole family will love, in a way that is quick and will save you money. We teach you how to save you time in the kitchen, money in the kitchen, and how to grow your health by using your kitchen. So please join Learn True Health Home Kitchen. Go to learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. That's learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. We make the videos fun and we share wonderful, wonderful recipes. I'm so excited for you to join. And the members, the listeners who have joined already have shared some amazing testimonials. One listener, within 5 days of beginning to incorporate what she learned from the membership, her chronic headaches went away and her fatigue went away. How cool is that? So join the Learn True Health Home Kitchen. Go to learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. That's learntruehealth.com/home kitchen. I can't wait to see you there.